Hey you. Yes, you. Thanks for tuning in to the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. My name is David Benjamin. I'm your host and the founder of HealthyWildAndFree.com. If you're like me, you understand that health, the mind, body, spirit, heart connection, and living a green, eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle are some of the most valuable and life-enhancing lessons that we can learn and pass on to our children to live happy and abundant lives. That's why this podcast was created, to help you grow in these areas. If you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, go to healthywildandfree.com, click the box at the top right-hand corner to get a free copy of our latest ebook, and you'll be subscribed to be notified about future podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and tuning in. Enjoy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Benjamin from healthywildandfree.com. Today I'm really excited to bring you this podcast because I have a guest who's actually a personal friend of mine, and I'm going to read his bio to you in a second here, but basically he's been a friend of mine for maybe about, what do you think, 4 years now or so?
3 or 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 years. So I've known, and we've become really good friends over that time because we see a lot of things very similarly in regards to health and all that kind of stuff. So he's actually here with me in person. That's why you heard him, obviously. And yeah, so it's going to be a fun podcast. We're going to talk about the growing tide and health awareness and how what positive things are actually occurring within health and what's going on and just to see the positive side of things and to kind of know what's going on. But then we're also going to talk about the media live because he comes from a journalistic background. So he's going to share with us how he saw things differently and how to kind of see through media BS, if you will, and really just empower yourself to make better decisions for your health, for your family, for the world as a whole. So his name is Meyer. He's a longtime journalist who's worked for the Detroit Free Press and been published in the Dallas Morning News and Yahoo and more. His work has been cited by Dr. Joseph Mercola, naturalnews.com, the Cornucopia Institute, and he is the founder of the website althealthworks.com, and that's A-L-T, healthworks.com, meaning alt health, alternative health works. And it does. So
it really does.
So in May 2012, his spotlight into holistic, environmental, and alternative health solutions began with the website as kind of a blog, and he does interviews with people doing really inspiring, positive things in health. And he talks a lot about food, kind of integrity, food freedom, GMOs, what's going on with that, and just the positive things going on. So, Nick, thank you for being here on the podcast with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, David, and I'm excited to just kind of shoot the breeze with you today.
It's going to be fun.
Touch on some topics that really need to get out there in the world, and yeah, I'm just ready to go.
And that not many people are talking about, too.
No.
Because you talk about a lot of unique stuff, and I think that's partially why if any of you listeners have seen healthworks.com, like I said, his work was cited by Mercola, Natural News, and Cornucopia Institute, and these are no small websites. These are some of the biggest websites in holistic health. And one more thing I wanted to share was that he personally interviewed Ron Paul in person, which I think is absolutely awesome. Like a lot of people I know want to meet Ron Paul, and it's just really cool because he's kind of one of the only politicians on the forefront of, food freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
Yeah, freedom overall, but
freedom in general.
Right, exactly. So I want to start this interview kind of like how I start all the interviews and just ask you, what's your story and how did you kind of get into holistic health originally, and why has it kind of become a passion and interest of yours?
Okay, so the funny thing about me is that I used to work in a pharmacy, actually Rite Aid Pharmacy, up here in Michigan, and pharmacies are typically seen as a place of health, right?
Right. Well, for most people.
According to the mainstream perspective, pharmacies are where you get healthy.
Right.
It's kind of assumed.
Right.
Pharmacies are where you get healthy, but that's not the case at all, especially not in my experience.
Yeah.
I noticed that pretty much all of the patients that we had as a cashier starting out, walking back to the pharmacy,
mm-hmm.
they were kind of out of it. They were kind of like
zoned out, if you will.
Zoned out, almost zombie-like, basically,
right.
in the way they were acting, and it just seemed like none of them ever really got any better.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to them on a day-to-day basis, and I saw them walking back to get their prescriptions. I'm like, aren't these people supposed to be getting healthier? Or
right. What's going on here? Wait a minute. Yeah.
So that was not what was happening at all. And from that point on, I kind of made me more inquisitive, and I kind of have that journalist mentality, and I just started to kind of work that into my practices, to my research, and that's when I found out more about holistic health, and I just couldn't stop learning about it.
But did you go to Did you go to University of Michigan, Dearborn for journalism before that or after that?
That was actually, it kind of coincided with coincided with each other.
Gotcha. So you kind of had that journalistic, inquisitive mindset during that time, which probably helped.
Definitely.
Gotcha. Cool.
And it was actually while I was kind of bored as a cashier at Rite Aid, I was looking at tabloid magazines because there's not many customers, and I stumbled upon a quote from a celebrity, some celebrity woman, like real, popular actress or something like that, and she talked about the book The 100-Year Lie by Randall Fitzgerald, and how that affected her perspective so much. And the book is basically about all the chemicals that we expose ourselves to on a day-to-day basis. Like, it kind of sets the scene, like, you wake up, you put on deodorant with certain chemicals that have been linked to breast cancer. You put on cosmetics that have been linked to skin cancer. What else? You wash your hair with shampoo, and that's linked to cancer too.
Right.
And so it kind of got me thinking, what's really going on here? Why are people so sick? Why are all these diseases, the rates of disease increasing so much? It's like, we have this war on cancer that we're spending billions of dollars on, and the problems seem to get worse year after year. The rates keep going up. So that was a book that had a pretty big influence on me.
And that was one of the kind of first health books that you read that was kind of like, whoa, this is interesting.
Definitely.
Gotcha. Is that all the book is about? Is kind of environmental, chemicals and stuff, or is it also about?
They also touch on GMOs and high fructose corn syrup.
Gotcha.
And all that stuff, like all the negative stuff that is really important to avoid.
Gotcha.
That's all in there too. And then from that book, I moved on to Food Inc., like a lot of people did. And it's just kind of a progression where you just go from one step to the next, and you just keep going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, quote unquote.
Right. Matrix style.
Exactly.
Wait, that's the pill. Never mind. Wrong analogy. Rewind.
Rewind it.
Yeah, so interesting. So it kind of exposed you, and that's funny how you kind of had that, observation from working in the pharmacy and then looking at what a celebrity said. So, something is probably different here. And it's kind of funny too, because
there's a better way.
Yeah, there's a better way, and it's kind of funny too, because a lot of celebrities I've noticed over the years are being more conscious and voicing their opinions. Like Woody Harrelson, for example. You and I both know Woody Harrelson's awesome. He's all into health and starting an eco-friendly paper company. Like he's just, he's just really cool. And then there's other ones too, but so it's kind of interesting. And if you look at the celebrities who are really like, voicing their opinions, and not the ones just kind of fabricating their image. So like the ones that are being real and authentic, you start to learn things and see things differently. So after that kind of experience, you became a journalist. What happened? How did that kind of change your perspective on things, and how did you learn from that, and how did that kind of progress?
Well, I started out at my first true journalism job after college was at the Detroit Free Press, which is the biggest paper in Michigan. And I was working on an entertainment website to start out, and my career focus was actually in sports. And so I started out with those two things, and eventually I made my way down to the news desk, the breaking news desk in Detroit, which, you've got a lot of fires, you've got a lot of shootings and murders and calling the cops and trying to talk to the Detroit cops, and they don't answer you back.
Right.
And so you kind of, I kind of was right in the fire of things, and just seeing how understaffed the newsroom is, and seeing people getting let go left and right, and kind of realizing that, not as much research and fact checking is done as people might think in the media.
Right.
We take everything the media says as gospel and truth, and I came to realize that these so-called alternative media sources, they might be a little more slanted toward one perspective, but essentially you're getting the same news.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the same thing, the same amount of fact checking,
mm-hmm.
same amount of research, just in a different package, basically.
Right. So it's just two different kind of perceptions on the same story, if you will. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, there's different perceptions a lot of times,
mm-hmm.
but I'm basically.
But you're saying it's not any more credible. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain amount of credibility that comes with a major newspaper.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a certain amount of bias that comes with that newspaper.
Right.
Like, they might be sponsored by, the food giants, your Kraft Foods, your
right.
GMO pushers,
GMO pushers.
the same people that are spending millions of dollars to stop GMO labeling in Washington and California.
Mm-hmm.
These tend to be the big sponsors of the big media organizations, especially TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as bad with the newspaper, but the newspaper has other priorities.
Mm-hmm.
They report on crime. They report on civic things like digging and trying to find things, and with like city council, city government, things like that. Mm-hmm. And then of course sports is a big focus. And so, I mean, health doesn't really factor in a whole lot when you talk about local newspapers, even national newspapers. Mm-hmm. They use a lot of syndicated health content, and it just comes from like one or two sources, and that is probably sponsored by the American Dietitian Association, which is sponsored by Frito-Lay's and Pepsi and all that. So it's just a crazy cycle.
The AMA, the FDA, one of the alphabet organizations that are three letters.
NSA.
Right. NSA is not sponsoring your children's lunch at school, ladies and gentlemen. We're kidding. Maybe, we don't know. It could be true. It may or may not be true. Look it up yourself.
They are finding parents who refuse to include grains and meat.
Oh yeah.
In a balanced lunch, quote unquote.
Quote unquote, yeah. If for those of you wondering what
in Canada.
Yeah, for those of you wondering what you're talking about, if you go to facebook.com/alternative health works, which is Nick's page, he posted a graphic of someone who was, they're actually fined, weren't they?
It was a mother that was fined for not having a complete lunch.
Because because she didn't include a grain, I think is what it was.
A grain.
And then they added Ritz crackers. They wrote it in, Ritz crackers. So that kid got his dose of GMOs, and I know we're kind of being lighthearted and laughing about this. We're laughing because it's ridiculous and we're aware of what's going on. I think one thing that's really important for everyone listening is to understand that if you know what's going on and you're aware of things, you can laugh about it and create comedy about it and then use that as an avenue to spread it even further to help other people become aware. True. Because I think sometimes when you're like really trying to like push ideas on people out of like negativity and like this is so wrong, people kind of get turned off. But comedy is a way to just send communication further. So it's kind of ridiculous and funny. If you look at it, you're like, really, wow, like that's ridiculous as a grown adult. So
you look at your Colbert report and your Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And they're getting these topics out there through humor.
Yeah, true. Exactly.
They're opening people up.
Yeah, good point. It's a great point. So those are two examples. Jon Stewart talks about GMOs multiple times, hasn't he? So it's if you know what's going on, you can laugh about it and be aware of it, and obviously not fall subject to victimhood, quote unquote, and use that kind of to empower yourself. But so when you were working for the newspaper, you kind of realized that it wasn't really necessarily 100%, like you said, gospel or truth. It was just
they did fine work with the time that they had, with the resources that they had.
Right.
They were genuine people.
Right.
But when it comes to like health stories, like it's just like, oh, check out The Wire. Here's a story that says you should eat a low-fat diet and eat, low-fat yogurt, even though it's made from cattle that consume GMOs.
Right. And has sugar or added preservatives and sugar, high fructose corn syrup added. Yeah.
Just kind of that macrocosm approach to health. That's what makes it into the newspapers, or at least was until this whole health movement started happening, and people were like, hey, I stopped drinking milk and I feel fantastic. Why is the newspaper still saying, hey,
drink milk,
drink your milk, like put this in your recipe,
Right. They're still wearing the milk mustaches on billboards, and you're like, what's going on? Yeah, that's interesting. So So you're saying kind of, and I don't, this podcast isn't to bash the media in any way, because like you said, they're doing the best they can, kind of, and it's like they're good people, but at the same time, it's not necessarily the most beneficial information, and it's not necessarily the most truthful or useful information. So it's like, and I think partially too is when you see the media, it's like they're kind of behind on that, so they're reporting on the studies that have come out years ago or have been believed to be true over time. And the most recent current information that's actually, relevant isn't, really talked about. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
A lot of times, yeah. But one thing I found over the years from watching the local news, you might see a study that says, turmeric fights cancer and is really strong against cancer. Mm-hmm. You might see that at the end of the broadcast for like a 2-minute segment.
Right.
And nobody really stops and puts 2 and 2 together and says, hey, maybe we shouldn't be consuming turmeric
all the time.
Maybe we should take it easy on the chemo. Maybe we should go back to what we did before everybody was getting cancer and just kind of chill out a little bit on all these invasive multi-million-dollar health procedures and drugs and things like that.
Shenaniganery.
Shenaniganery.
I had to use that word once this podcast. Shenaniganery, ladies and gentlemen. That's a good point. And even if there's something kind of positive, it's the back. It's
a fleeting thought.
Right.
No one actually is no one actually back then was putting all these things together, mm-hmm. reminding people, putting it out there in the public consciousness so that it actually becomes something that everybody is aware of.
Right.
Because it's such an afterthought on the news broadcast or in the newspaper, buried on page 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. There was actually a story in the Detroit Free Press about a woman who founded a raw cafe in downtown Detroit. Mm-hmm. David and I have been there several times. It was called the Raw Cafe.
Great spot. I just said. Good.
True. And it was across the street from a Mickey D's, from a McDonald's. And we would, have our raw food in there and look across the street at the people eating McDonald's, and we're like, man, they don't know what they're missing out on. And anyway, the founder of the cafe, her name was Lakita, I believe, and she was a cancer survivor just through diet, just through switching to a raw, organic, plant-based diet. Mm-hmm. And, basically, it's a story of her reversing her own cancer. You would think they would blow this up and put this on the front page of the newspaper because, I mean, can we say that she cured her cancer on this broadcast?
We'll say I like to use the word healed. Yeah. She healed her cancer, because healed is it's cured. I don't know people whatever about cured, but she definitely healed her cancer. I mean, she's alive. We both
can't just talk that. I mean, it's a fact.
Right. There's many people that have done this, so it's not completely crazy or and she's a great example of that, and she took something that has helped her and created a restaurant to help many others. And unfortunately, her restaurant went out of business, which was kind of unfortunate because
tough spot to have a raw restaurant and food desert that is downtown Detroit.
Right. Yeah.
Or Detroit in general.
Right. And in Detroit, not many people are kind of into raw foods yet, as far as I know at least. There's not much of. I mean, it's not Southern California, basically, is what I'm saying. But yeah. So okay. So yeah. That's okay. So we talked a little about.
So what I was getting at there is, if somebody like me or David were the editor of the newspaper, or if there were more health awareness at the newspaper in general, mm-hmm. the story of that woman reversing her cancer would be front page news. Mm-hmm. And that would wake up so many people and make such a change so fast.
Right.
So that's kind of what alternative media and social media is doing now. Mm-hmm. In terms of alternative health. So.
Right. And I would say that that should be front page news. If you look at the news right now, like you kind of said, not the percentage, but you were like, they report on crime, civic things, and then sports. It's kind of the big three, if you will. It's like, okay, crime, how's that really relevant to our lives? Negative, fear-based energy, and then you have
city stuff would be classified as,
I don't know. Well, I'm not sure, is there?
Well, crime is negative, city stuff is informative.
Right, yeah. So
And then sports is, I love sports and it helped me as a journalist a lot, but it's a distraction.
Right, yeah, it's a distraction. And so, yeah, it makes front page, huge upset, last second shot or whatever, and then meanwhile, the cancer healing story doesn't make the last page of the paper. So, it's kind of interesting the information that is put into the news, and whether it's media broadcast through television or a newspaper, it's kind of like those three kind of categories. So we're kind of seeing the categories of that now. Whereas the work that you do with All Health Works is taking that story of someone that healed their cancer, or the story of someone that is doing something amazing for health in their community, or someone that's, we'll talk about the greenhouse and the hospital a little bit here in a little bit, and just doing something amazing, and you're taking those positive stories, those positive models that people are creating for health for themselves or their communities, and then you're helping that reach a lot more people, which is awesome, which is one reason why I go to allhealthworks.com more now than I do to naturalnews.com, because I know that there's going to be more positive stories, and I know I can get inspired and get better